So hi Ignatius and hi Philip. Thank you for contributing your chapter on religions and the environment to the state of the evidence. I'd like to ask you to summarize the chapter during this conversation. And I will start with a question on the main key points, the key takeaways on religions and the environment that you would like to offer the readers.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity to contribute this chapter to the report. To come in on your question, maybe there's 2 points that I can mention to start us out. And the first one is that really in recent years, one can see what one can call an ecological turn in many of the world religions and religious communities across the globe, both at local level and at global level. And this is really quite significant that even in areas, even in remote areas, you will find that there's suddenly a feeling in religious communities that causes them to engage with ecological and environmental questions and questions of climate change, both in a practical way and in a theological way, or in an ideological way in terms of ecological teachings. Mm-hmm. Some scholars have said this is religions are becoming green, so there's a greening of religions. I'm not sure if that might not be a little bit overdoing it, but at least there's this ecological turn that's clearly visible in many of the world religions. And I mean, there are several examples. There is in Islam, there's the Al-Mizan movement. In the Catholic Church, there's the encyclical Laudato Si, and there are several other examples of similar initiatives where one can see, this ecological turn.
So we can say, Philip, just to interrupt you, it's an ongoing, intensifying movement as we go on, and perhaps in 5 years' time, it might look quite different, or in terms of its growth.
Yeah,
it's a very dynamic process in a sense. It's a very dynamic development, also taking different shapes in different contexts, of course. Mm-hmm. And then maybe as
what you're saying, because I guess it also links up to our next questions, and it's a matter of acceleration as well. I feel like that has been a strong acceleration in the last few years, but Philip, did you want to say anything else about the key points?
Yeah, I mean, that leads us to the other questions, I guess, that there's also quite a dynamic development in terms of research and literature on religion and ecology. If you look at the developments there's really quite a dynamic development in terms of literature on religion and ecology, both from within the religion and development literature, as well as beyond the religion and development literature.
Yeah, I think just also to come in again in terms of the key takeaways, how we also end our chapter. Is saying that we need more research. So it's not the one or the other practice or the academic side of it. And there, I think the importance of collaboration between practitioners and academic research is very important. But to develop more understanding, I mean, we still at the many ways. I mean, there's already our chapter gives evidence of a massive corpus of literature already, but still, especially on the local level, in terms of ideas, theologies that comes with the practice on the ground, we need more research to understand better. I think so. That is also a major ongoing challenge.
And also, just to add on that, how these how this engagement in terms of theologies or in terms of ecological teachings actually affects practice, affects actions by religious communities and practices by members. You know, what is the impact on the ground of documents like Laudato Si or Al-Mizan?
Yeah, how does this movement is starting to change what is happening on the ground?
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think it's probably the way ahead, right? What's going to come in the next few years, hopefully, in terms of new research being published. And so I'll move on to the second question that I was going to ask you, and maybe we can even combine the other two questions in terms of what are the differences between what has been produced in terms of research in the last 20 years as opposed to in the last, say, 5 years. So what has changed? What were the main trends since the early 2000s? And what have been the more recent trends in the literature, both produced by academics and maybe also produced by NGOs, faith-based organizations, and other actors.
Philip, I think perhaps we can go back to the earlier years, and perhaps then you can come in first.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at this entire debate on religion and environment, religion and ecology, a very influential point of contention, so to say, is the hypothesis by Lynn White. I mean, this is not in the past 20 years, this is from the 1960s and 70s already, that the anthropocentric nature of Western Christianity has really led to contributed to the environmental crisis. That's the basic thesis there, that because the humans are considered the owners of the earth in a sense, they can do whatever they want with it, and there needs to be no consideration for natural environment and so forth, or it's only there to serve human needs in a sense. And since then there has been, and also partly because of this thesis brought forward in the 60s, since then there has really been quite a substantial development of eco-theology, starting in the 70s, moving on in the 80s and 90s, especially in mainline Christian circles, but also beyond that. One really sees it across religious communities. And so that is the development that kind of influences the longer term literature, this debates on ecological sustainability, also influenced by the debates on the limits of growth and all of that.
If we focus on the first part of our chapter, I think one of the important points that we are making is that this is ongoing ecological awareness and eco-theologies are across the faith traditions. I mean, that also calls for the importance of interfaith dialogue, I think, for the future. But yeah, so the emphasis, it's actually a very large interfaith movement.
And I think in the past 5 years, the more recent literature and I mean, one cannot really separate the developments in the literature from the developments in faith communities themselves or religious communities themselves. I think this is running very much in parallel, that one really sees this. I mean, as also, in the past 5 years, we've seen the advent of the Fridays for Future movement, and climate change and environmental issues have really moved to the top of the global discourse and local discourses as well. So there's really been an acceleration. It's continuing of these issues, you know, in the discourse in general, and that has really also led, in my view, to an exponential rise in ecological engagement in religious communities over the past 5 years. I mean, all these major documents by world religions are from the past 7 or so years. Laudato Si and yeah, as I said, Amizan, and but also from a Buddhist perspective, from a Hindu perspective, yeah.
Yes, what we also in our report in terms of the last 5 to 6 years is the distinction between basically 2 groups of literature. The one coming from the field of religion and development, and of course there the Sustainable Development Goals agenda of 2015 has rendered a lot of momentum for this field to focus on environmental issues, ecological issues. And then, of course, what we've also seen in that literature is, but from a more critical side, or one of the huge challenges still is far more integration of the different pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals. Perhaps practitioners are managing that better, but from academic side, there's so much focus on the politics of the SDGs and how can FPOs and religion be brought into the agenda, and a lot of focus on the social aspects of the SDGs, while in many ways not so much yet on the environmental aspect, but also, and I think that is the idea with the agenda, is the integration of the 3 pillars. So that is one of the things that we notice from our analysis of the literature as a noticeable shortcoming. And then, in a sense, we are more positive about Laudato Si and the literature coming from that side. And in a sense also claims that it's actually taking us beyond development, that while the religion development field likes to draw on Laudato Si, it's actually moving into a post-development direction. Development is never mentioned, really. And this very strong notion of ecological conversion. It, of course, links to the integral human development aspect of the past, but now ecological integral ecology becomes the key notion, drawing everything into a integrated whole, one could say. So that I think that's an important part of our report, and our excitement for Laudato Si and where it's taking us and where it will take us in the future. And then, of course, the other strand of literature lies outside the development focus, and it's already also yes, a huge corpus of literature. And perhaps there can be more conversation between these 2 strands in future. I certainly have learned from exploring that side also. It's amazing what exists already at this point in time. Philip, perhaps you can add to that. I think one of the important notions from that strand of literature is also the notion of spiritual ecology, and how broad that is in terms of what it incorporates. So many other concepts and developments within the religion ecology field.
Yeah, but before going there, I'm just thinking of a question that we didn't specifically say this in our report, but would you say that in a way the religion and ecology literature or the religion and ecology debates and the religion and development debates have moved or are moving closer together, maybe in the past 5 years or so, that we see a kind of these two strands becoming closer. Now that we are thinking about it, it seems to me it's like that a little bit, and maybe in the future even strengthening this post-development or relating to this post-development notions of post-development.
Oh, that's an interesting question. My first reaction would be to say no. I see it as two different strands, and perhaps it needs to discover each other. That has not really happened yet. I think the Laudato Si movement and is perhaps closer to this other strand of literature. And I think in that sense is inspiring also the religion and ecology field outside development. I think there's literature that also very much draw on Laudato Si. But as we said already, actually the question is if Laudato Si is in any way a development document, perhaps a development text. It never refers to development. It's perhaps more a post-development text.
Yeah, maybe there's a need for the religion and development to take more note of the ecological debates, religion and ecology debates.
It seems to me we've just thought about the possibility of another article, topic for another article.
And I also think it actually fits very well into wider debates, because of course your chapter is in and of itself a source of reflection on the field, but it also contributes to broader reflections on where religions and development is going as a field, if such a field exists in itself, but we do think that it exists and that it's evolving into something else. So I think this is an important part, important insight into debates in the post-2030 agenda and what becomes of reflections on development and religions more widely.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything?
I think perhaps one of the just very quickly is that I think that the ecological focus can move religion development into a post-development direction, and is perhaps already doing that. That doesn't mean that religion development then ends as a field or terminates as a field, but it becomes more post-development in scope and conceptualizing alternatives to development.
Yes. Yeah, very good point. And Philip, did you want to add anything? Or I think this is a very good point to kind of...
Yeah, no, I think this is really a good outlook also, to kind of see, look ahead to the broadening of the religion and development or religion and sustainable development field, yeah.
Okay, then thank you both very much for your contribution, your chapter, this interview, and yeah, I really recommend reading your chapter to anyone who's interested, as we said, both in ecology, the environment, and religions, but more broadly, religions and development and post-development.
Yeah, thank you so much.